We now know who Joe Biden's running mate will be.
That is, it is Senator Kamala Harris. If the pair would be elected, Harris would be the nation's first Black and first Asian American vice president. Biden had promised to pick a woman as his running mate. Harris currently serves on several committees, including the Homeland Security and Government Affairs committees. She was also the California Attorney General. Now today, Joe Biden tweeted, "I have the great honor to announce that I've picked a fearless fighter for the little guy and one of the country's finest public servants as a running mate." Our digital anchor Stephanie Haney joins us now. And Stephanie, Biden's decision is getting obviously a lot of talk online.
It sure is, Betsy. And former Vice President Joe Biden definitely took his time making this call. So when the news came out, reaction came very quickly to Senator Kamala Harris being named as his vice presidential running mate. Now, as we said, Biden did promise to pick a woman to run with, and people were happy to see him keep his word. Shannon Stark had her Kamala Harris, the future is female mug ready to go, calling her selection the best news ever. This person, a longtime California resident, said Harris was great in her role as district attorney of San Francisco, and even though they're surprised with this pick, they are very happy about it. But not everyone likes Harris's record as a prosecutor. Trevor Thacker says that no one has hurt the Black community more than Harris and Biden together, and guessed that this choice made for a lot of happy conservative voters. Others, though, are motivated by the Biden-Harris ticket. This Twitter user says she will personally make sure every member of their family votes in November because of this announcement. Now, there were definitely some who were questioning the call, but the overwhelming majority of the posts that I saw talking about this online today, very excited about this and all of the potential firsts that Harris would represent if they do win, Betsy.
Well, of course, the big deciding factor is going to be coming up in November, so we'll see what the voters have to say about it. Thanks a lot, Stephanie.